Good afternoon. My name is Jim Conlan. Welcome to the latest edition of our entertainment show, where we look at iconic movies and TV series that have left their mark throughout the industry, throughout the decades. This week's feature, we're going back to the early 1980s. We're going back to the real sort of detective sort of era where we had everything from the Rockford Files to Starsky and Hutch, but also one of the Miami Vice even before that. But one of the most shining lights of that era was TJ Hooker, which ran for 5 seasons between 1982 to 1986. We all know William Shatner was in that as the TJ Hooker, but he had a brash, young, cocky sort of a sidekick, a young sort of detective. Who is he sort of a file? He was Robin to his Batman, and that was the one and only played by, the character was Vince Romano, and that was played by my guest this evening, the one and only Adrian Zmed. Adrian, I know it's very humid where you are at the moment out in Las Vegas, but back in the 1980s, TJ Hooker, was it very much humid on set? It was one of the big shows. It was all over Warner Brothers, Burbank Studios in Los Angeles. It was the rival to that time of the A-Team was going out in the 80s. It was one of the big TV series, and one of its big sort of rivals at that time, a different sort of genre, was TJ Hooker. And I suppose to be involved with an iconic TV series like that, and William Shatner was probably the well-known, renowned actor at that time, was it sort of one of the highlights of your life, one of the highlights of your career, being involved in such a series for 5 seasons?
Well, it was my biggest break. I had just done I had done two pilots of series before TJ Hooker, but they didn't last. They only were on the air for 5 or 6 episodes, each one of them. But this one was the one that was the big show that stayed and was on for, as you know, you had mentioned, 5 years. So this was a huge break for me at the time. I had done a lot of Broadway work prior to that, and headed to Hollywood to see what could happen for me in Hollywood. And a couple of years of like doing those shows, the pilots that I had just mentioned. One of them was a spin-off of Saturday Night Fever. Okay. The other one, a very interesting little show called Good Time Girls, and it was a throwback to the 1940s about a boarding house in Washington, D.C. And it was the producers of Happy Days actually produced that, and we thought that was going to be a monster hit because it was a tremendous cast, but it just wasn't meant to be. So we were on for like 7 episodes, and then I thought, wow, okay, this is getting a little tough here. And you had mentioned Starsky and Hutch. Well, I did soon after that pilot, soon after that series was canceled, The Good Time Girls, I did a guest spot on Starsky and Hutch, and I one of the funniest roles of my life, which was a disco dancing pickpocket killer on Starsky and Hutch. And the producers were the same producers who were producing the TJ Hooker.
Okay.
And from that guest starring role that I did. So they actually requested me to come in and read for the role of Romano for the TJ Hooker pilot, which actually was a 2-hour made-for-TV movie originally. And from that TV movie to the actual, when it went on the air, the show changed drastically. There were 10 other rookie cops that Bill Shatner were training. And it ended up just being me in a police car with Bill after we did the pilot, and it aired. And then 8 months later, we were picked up, and it was just Bill and me in a squad car, and he was my mentor. So yeah, it was there's no question, it was a huge step for me. You know, they say in our business that you know, you have to have talent when opportunity knocks. And I had been really well trained, and I was pretty much ready to do just about anything at that point, but I wasn't trained on film. I was more trained on stage. And Bill was, I was very lucky to have Bill as my mentor in that situation, because he had done so much, on film at that point. His presence, and I watched him in close-ups, and I was a student of how he did things, and it helped me calm down. I was young, as you said. Romano was young and brash. I'm still brash, but I'm not young anymore. But at that time, I joke and I say I was trying to cure cancer with my acting. Every moment was intense, and I had to just get every thought out to everybody. And I watched Bill, and he was so relaxed in everything that he did, and still got his thoughts across, to the audience. And I learned a lot by just watching him, and I learned to breathe and relax when I was especially in close-ups, because it's just you can't lie in a close-up. It's all right here in the eyes, in television and film. When they start doing the close-ups, I say that the eyes are the windows to the soul. So I was fortunate to have Bill and kind of just watch him be the pro that he was. And plus he was just a great guy, and he was like a father to me, the way he took me under, he just guided me in many things in the business itself too. So it was a wonderful, incredible time, for me.
And Adrian, if I correct the original show, it wasn't called TJ Hooker. It was sort of changed. It had a different title completely in terms of its beginning.
Right. It was called The Protectors.
Yeah.
And it, as I said, it truly took place at the LAPD Police Academy, which is where the rookie police train. And it was about a class at that point of all these young men and women who wanted to be policemen and policewomen. So yeah, like I said, between when it was we did that, and it aired, and it was picked up, and it changed drastically, and it was just me and him in a squad car, and there was actually another girl behind the desk. Her name was April Clow before Heather did it. April Clow did 5 episodes and she was the girl behind the desk, and then she was replaced by Heather Locklear at that time, and then of course Heather then moved into a squad car with Jimmy Darren. And maybe I think year 2 or 3 is when all of that happened. But yeah, things changed drastically, and I was bound by contract to the Protectors at that time, and it was a year that I was held to them, and they had to pick it up within the year. And if they didn't, then I was released from the contract. I ended up doing the movie Grease 2 in that time.
Okay.
So I was busy that year. We had filmed the pilot of TJ Hooker like in January or February, and then right after that, I did Grease 2, and we filmed for about 3 to 4 months doing Grease 2 at the time. And then when I was finished with Grease 2, I found out that Hooker was picked up, and we started shooting Hooker in the fall.
Yeah, and Adrian, you mentioned that. I remember speaking to Dwight Schultz in the past, and who was a member of the A-Team who played Murdoch. And Dwight said basically when you were on a recurring show like that in the 80s, basically for 5 seasons, it was a year-round thing. It was practically 11 or 12 months. You couldn't really commit to any other project because it took practically basically 9-10 months of the year to shoot one season. It was very hard even to have any sort of downtime at all. That once one season was over, then you're waiting to hear the news that you're up for another season. So basically it was 3 to 4 years of your life if you are in a recurring role like that.
Yeah, it was, we shot, back in those days, we shot 26 episodes a year. Now they're only doing like 10 to 13 episodes per season on things. And it took what we call 7 shooting days to shoot our show. And that was the norm for an action series. Meaning like you shot Monday through Friday. Of course, you have the weekend off, and then the Monday and Tuesday of the following week, you're still doing that episode, and then you start the next episode on the Wednesday, and it's 7 shooting days all the time. So it took a good 9 to 10 months, a year to shoot those episodes. But we were looking ahead always in the later when we knew that our we called our hiatus was going to be coming up, we looked ahead to that time to book other things. Of course, we all wanted to take a little bit of a vacation, and we did that. But we also booked other things that we wanted to do. You did a lot of films in between the years when I had time off from TJ Hooker.
And Adrian, one of the sort of trends was the 80s was that we always had these sort of TV sort of series, but they always had that sort of glamour girl, that sort of pin-up girl. If you look at the Dukes of Hazzard, they had Catherine Bach, who played Daisy Duke. And for you, when Heather Locklear came along in the 80s, she was probably one of the most upcoming models in terms of a beautiful, attractive woman at that sort of time. Did that sort of, do you feel, bring a sort of a new element? It made it sort of sexy, sort of made it flash, the whole element of TJ Hooker, that sort of idea, sort of bring out this sort of futuristic sort of, I wouldn't say futuristic, but glamorize the whole sort of cop world. Did she bring a bit of glamour to the show?
Yeah, we, it's so funny. I was classically trained as an actor, and all I ever wanted to do was just work as an actor, and I didn't want to be considered anything else except an actor. But I was who I was. I looked the way that I looked, and there was a certain amount of sex appeal that the producers wanted in the show. And usually there was always a girl in the 80s, that was that girl in the series that was the sex appeal girl, and they wanted me to be that younger guy who were all in all of the teeny bopper magazines and I did posters and stuff like that, and it was a part of the era in the business, at that time. I mean, it's always that way. Back in the 60s, you had all of those guys like Frankie Avalon and Jimmy Darren doing the Gidget movies and the Beach Blanket movies and stuff like that, and then in the 70s it was something else, but they were always sex appeal characters in the show. But probably more so in the 80s than anything was a formula. And you are right in saying that. Just about every show had its they have one or two great looking guys and one or two great looking girls in it, and all. So we were a product of the 80s ourselves too, and there was an element of that. They always were taking off my clothes in TJ Hooker. We were always shooting in a locker room, and I'm getting undressed. We were at a swimming pool. We were they were always doing that kind of stuff, and I'm saying, oh guys, do we have to do this? And yeah, we do. So all right, okay, you're the producers.
You pay the bills as well, I suppose. Adrian, in terms of TJ Hooker as well, in terms of 72 episodes that you appeared in, I'm just sort of wondering, as well, towards the end of the 5 seasons, was it almost like fatigue? And were you sort of delighted in one sense that it was coming to a conclusion? Did you feel maybe, because it's such a journey to be, you mentioned 22 episodes sort of per season. Did you feel maybe 5 seasons was, at that time, was the amount right, or was there a bit sort of disappointment when the initial reaction was it was all coming to an end?
There's no question that it's a grind. 13 hours a day for 10 months is quite a grind on your body and your mind. But I loved it. I absolutely loved doing the show. I loved the cast. I loved the crew. We were a family. The end of TJ Hooker was very strange for me in that we were canceled, and we were really quite surprised that we were canceled. But there was a new change of over at ABC network, and they wanted different kind of programming going on, but we were still doing very well in the ratings, and we were all quite surprised when we were canceled. And they wanted something else in our time slot. We were usually on Saturday nights. We were always on Saturday night. When we were canceled that week, I immediately got an offer to host a show. It was actually a dance contest show, which really was the precursor to all of the Dancing with to Dancing with the Stars. It was a show called Dance Fever, and I don't think it aired in the UK ever, but it was actually in year 7, and they were and they wanted to replace the host. And the producers knew that I could sing and dance because the movie Grease 2 had come out, and it required for the host to be able to sing and dance. And that week when we were canceled, I accepted that job, and I was really sad that Hooker was finished, but I was also grateful that I immediately was offered something else. And at that time, there weren't any singing and dancing shows going on in Hollywood. The movie musicals were far in between, and also I thought this was awesome. I could go back to my roots of doing Broadway musicals and stuff. And then about 3 weeks after I had accepted that contract, they said that Hooker was picked up for 10 episodes. I think it was 10 or 11 episodes to be aired on late night. On I think it was CBS, and I couldn't do it because I had already accepted that contract, and I wasn't able to do those episodes. And the reason they did those extra 10 to 11 episodes, back in at that time, there was a magical number of shows that you had to have already shot in what they call in the can, meaning shot all 5 complete seasons of 26 shows per season, and we were short by 10 or 12 episodes to put the show into syndication all around the world.
Okay.
It's a magic number of 5 years at 26 shows a year. And they needed to shoot those final 10 or 11 shows to complete the 5-year syndication package. And I wasn't able to do it. So it broke my heart that the show was doing those last episodes. And many fans have always written to me and said, why did you leave the show in those final shows? And I didn't actually leave the show. I was offered something else because we were canceled, and I accepted it. So to answer your question about, was it how I felt, it was a grind, but I would have done another 5 years. I would have done it forever. It was so much joy doing that show.
And Adrian, is it correct in saying that Stephen Cannell was sort of in relation to the Stunts team? Was it the same sort of Stunts team in TJ Hooker that was involved with the Stephen Cannell's productions in the 80s?
Well, Stunts Unlimited, that's who was the stunt, that's who did, all the stunts in Hollywood at that time. Our producers were Aaron Spelling and Leonard Goldberg, who had Charlie's Angels and The Love Boat and hotel, tons of, he had like 10 shows on at the same time. Aaron Spelling was the king of ABC at the time, but we did kind of use all of the same stuntmen in all of those shows at that time. They went back and forth from all of the shows based on what stunt had to be done. If somebody needed to fall off of a building, it was that guy who did all that specialty of falling off a building. If it was the guy who did great motorcycle stunts, it was the guy who went back and forth to all of those shows. But we all used Stunts Unlimited at that time.
Okay.
And it was a great group of guys.
And Adrian, I know it's you're based in Las Vegas now, and in terms of the singing and renowned, doing an awful lot of shows in there. And you mentioned before we came on live on air that you've been to Ireland before in terms of performing as well. And what was your sort of memories of that? Are you full time now performing out in Las Vegas?
Well, there has been a lockdown and a pandemic going on here too, so we are slowly coming back the venues in Las Vegas. My wife is a singer at Harrah's, the casino here, and she just went back last month with her band there. She's a feature band on the weekends, and things are starting to pick up. I was actually on tour. Well, let me talk about the show that I did in the United Kingdom. I was in Ireland about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, something like that. And I did a tour of Lacage Fall with John Partridge.
Okay.
It was one of the greatest joys that I've had on stage in my life. I did about 30 cities throughout the United Kingdom, between Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and England. And I had the most wonderful time going to all those cities and theaters, and you people love theater so much and you can feel it when you're in every city and how it's so well supported. And it was just an absolute joy to be doing that show. And it was actually the right time for that show to tour, because the message of La Cage aux Folles is to be who you are, and be proud of it, of who you are. And it was it's a great message at this time in our lives. That no matter what you want to do in your life, it's important that you are who you are, and all. I was on tour with a brilliant little play called Middletown when the lockdown hit the United States, and we're coming up on almost 2 years coming up in a few months that we locked it down, and I'm going back out on tour with that show.
Okay.
Start in November. We're actually starting up in Miami, and the next city after that will be Dallas. But it's a beautiful 4-character show called Middletown. So I'll be going out with that. And I also want to mention that my sons have performed in quite a few cities in Ireland, and they are scheduled to be in Ireland next year in 2022 with their show. They're musicians and singers, and they have a brilliant little show called the Everly Brothers Experience. And it's a tribute show to the Everly Brothers, the famous Everly Brothers of the 50s and 60s. And they themselves, they were booked for quite a couple of years ahead of time when the lockdown hit the United States, and are now slowly going back, and they're starting to go out on tour themselves with that show. So look for them, the Everly Brothers Experience, and they're called the Zmed Brothers. You can't miss it. And they do quite a few cities actually when they do go to Ireland. They were there 2 years. They were there just before the lockdown hit, like 3 or 4 months actually before the lockdown hit here in Ireland. So look for them.
Yeah. And Adrian, lastly, for the final sort of minute before I let you go, just one to rack the brains now for you, back to TJ Hooker again. Let's pretend there was an encyclopedia, a dictionary as such. This is probably the hardest question I'm going to ask you. And let's pretend someone came about and they said they want to put Vince Romano's character into that encyclopedia, and they left 2 blank sentences underneath the character's name, like a synopsis as such. And the talent agent came across, and we want Adrian Zmed to write those sort of 2 sentences to sum up Vince Romano. What would you like those 2 sentences to read now?
Wow, that's a good. That's a new one. I have to tell you, I've been doing this for 40 years, and that's a new. That's a new one. Probably to reflect who I was as an actor trying to do with Vince Romano, and that is, he was a character who, I guess, very similar to me, was always trying very, very hard to do the right thing, and but he was young and he made mistakes, and he learned by his mistakes, and in the end, what we all wanted to do with TJ Hooker was to show who those 2 cops were in a police car, to show that they were actually human beings, not just these authorities who just are, have a uniform on. We wanted to show that they're regular human beings who have faults, but still want to help people in the world, and bring justice, to the world. So, he was a character who wanted to help put the wrong people, the bad people in jail, and keep make it a safe world for all of the good people.
On that note, Adrian Zmed, a pleasure talking to you today, to relive your memories of your time in TJ Hooker, our cult classic TV series we're looking at this month. You were in it from 1982 to 1986, 5 seasons. You appeared in 72 episodes as Vince Romano. We'll definitely keep out for the Zmed brothers that are going to be touring here in Ireland fairly soon. No doubt they're going to be joyful night's entertainment, so do check them out and do go visit them. And Adrian, hopefully we'll see you back in our country in the near future as well. But for the moment, Adrian Zmed, take care and God bless.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care, Adrian.